You ready? Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man sara sabilihi ila yawmidin amma ba'd. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we'll be continuing discussing the book Al-Mulaqis Al-Fiqhi by Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Hafidullah ta'ala. And we're discussing Kitab Al-Nikah, where he discussed different matters regarding matters that pertain to the ahkam of Al-Nikah, which is marriage. And from the last lesson that we had, we discussed what is titled as the Bab regarding Al-Bab fi shurut fi nikah, regarding those conditions or conditions that one of the parties may place on the other during the marriage. So after discussing those matters, now we'll go to the next bab that is usually follows, which is titled Babun fi al-uyub fi nikah. So this is the next matter regarding of those things that may occur in the marriage, where you find that there's some form of uyub, some form of deficiency from one of the person in the from one of the person involved in the marriage. So what are the ahkam that relates to this? Aywa.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillahi qala ma'allif hafidhullah, chapter 7, page 385. Defects in spouses. There are defects that if found in one of the married couple, the other has the right of option whether to cancel the marriage contract or not. The following are some examples.
So before they mention an example that of the things that somewhat will explain that they mention regarding concerning, they mention uyub. So bab uyub, which mention is some form of defect by one of the parties. So they mention that what is this uyub? It is kullu aib, any form of defect. Khalaqi, that from the person's general physical matin. Yanfir ahad zawjain min sahibi. Urfan. So it is something, a person of some form of physical defect where one of the parties find it difficult to cope or to manage with. So one of the parties may have some form of physical defect where the other person somewhat they find it very difficult for them to cope and to continue with that marriage with that defect of that party. So with that in case, they mentioned that so this is what is intended. So they mentioned that, so in this case, we'll discuss concerning then what are the options that the person have regarding these defects. So what are the options that the person have in pertaining to these type of cases if they were to arise? Aywa.
If a wife finds out that her husband is unable to copulate with her due to his impotency, she has the right to rescind the marriage contract. In addition, if a woman claims that her husband is impotent and the latter does not deny it, the husband is to be given a chance for a year to copulate with her. Yet, if he still could not copulate with her during that period, she has the right to rescind the marriage contract.
So the first of the examples that Sheikh mentioned, so of those cases that are considered to be of uyub, where to see with the uyub, where she have a ikhtiyar, where either that the other party can either they can still continue the marriage, still continue through the marriage, but know that this defect is there in that person, or if they wish that they can undo the marriage. So that's the option there, which is that's the khiyar. So that's the khiyar, either to still continue through the marriage, or the other option that they have is that they can discontinue the marriage based upon that defect. That so I mentioned that what will be some of those defects that the person might have or deficiency in the other person or reason we call uyub that are fault that are there. They mention they give certain type of dawabit. So these have dawabit and also you have aqsam. So of those dawabit they mention that so is regarding concern that those dawabit, anything that kind of somewhat it will hamper fulfillment of the person's marriage obligation. So the person unable to carry one certain amount of his of marital obligations, then this considered to be serious fault that the person may bring to the marriage. Aywa.
If the husband finds that his wife is afflicted with a shortcoming that hampers copulation, such as colpotetresia, and that such a defect is incurable, the husband then has the right to rescind the marriage contract.
So you have those cases that occur in both the male or the female. So they mentioned that case where intimacy is difficult, and those type of cases. So they mentioned these uyub that generally either fall into matter regarding matters that that sometimes relate to the one side, the husband, or those defects that relates to the other side, which is the bride, or something that is shared between both, or something that it occur in any party. So in most cases, that's concerning of the Aywa.
If one of the two spouses find a defect in the other, such as hemorrhoids, insanity, vitiligo, leprosy, baldness, or halitosis, the former then has the right of choice whether to cancel the marriage contract or not, due to the repulsion caused by such defects.
So they mentioned, so these are examples. So either go to things that relates to the person, physical fatigue. So either where the person unable to cope with the person's, where in those cases concerned, the person wasn't aware of those things, that wasn't made known to them, and they found out after. Now, so the person before it was mentioned, and they knew and they accepted, then the marriage is valid.
But Omar, there's a big difference between leprosy and baldness, though.
And baldness.
That's a big.
Hey, sometimes they go, as I say, go back to urf.
Okay.
As I say, go back to, regarding concerning these things, they go back to the urf for the customs, or what people can deal with. You understand? Or what becomes the more common practice. So that's giving some example. So they're giving some example. So those things that either go back to the person at times, it may be said, no, physically, or it could be a time where said impotency from, so those things also illnesses that could bring about those reasons for the person not to annul the marriage. So it could be of those things. Aywa. Or one may want children, a person, for example, the person may able to can have intimacy, but they cannot per se bear children. But a person, the other person, they want to have children. But to say this wasn't known before, it becomes known after. Then you have those cases, the person then have that option. But with today's society, you can try different medical approaches. As the Sheikh mentioned, the first one regarding that, in some of the cases, is to still give them a time for them to see if they can work things out or work through things. But if they find out, they have tried what they can medically or whatever way that they choose to try, but still not working, then the option then, it goes now to the other side to decide as to what to do next. Aywa.
The great scholar Ibn al-Qayyim said, every defect that causes a spouse to be disinclined to the other and prevents the fulfillment of the purpose of marriage, i.e. copulation, entails the right of choice whether to cancel it or not. Invalidation in this case is worthier than the invalidation of a trade transaction due to a defect.
So they mentioned that كل عيب ينفر أحد الزوجين من الآخر. So he mentioned that every عيب. So very broad term, broad words regarding every عيب. So you might find that, so the ulama mentioned, it's not per se every single defect or shortcomings that may reach the level of to nullify the marriage. So it can somewhat say, it goes back to those things that can somewhat, it is those things that may impact on the objective of the marriage objective. So if those things are not able to be fulfilled, then that becomes an aib that can be looked at. So it's not per se every single aib. So the person, for example, that was not told, the person, for example, the husband or one of the parties, that they have a missing toe. They have a missing toe, right? So maybe some people are born like that, or some people might have an additional toe. So that may be, is this something to nullify the marriage? The person might have an additional toe or finger, or the person have a missing toe. Is that a reason to nullify the marriage? So not per se every single is those ones that it goes against the objective, the main objective of the marriage. Things that are the main core things relating to the marriage. Aywa.
The right of option to rescind the marriage contract is due to the spouse who does not accept the defect of the other, even if the former has a similar or a different defect. This is because man does not feel distinguished with his own defects. However, if any of the married couple accepts the defect of the other, provided being aware of the defect and showing a sign of acceptance, such as saying, I accept that defect, such a spouse does not have the right of option to rescind the marriage contract due to that defect afterwards.
If that's the case, so if the person that know that it become known to them regarding that short or defect that the person may have, then if the person by saying that I accept this, then the marriage continue without the person then can pull out of the marriage. So I said that those things go back to the mention al-ishra, that about the person conduct themselves towards their wife. So the behavior is that hard to bear. Type you have a second that a husband that is the fact that he wants to get married, got married, then finds he is unable to house his wife. So this person is not looking for a job and he's not working. So he's in the house his wife. So the example mentioned a nasal where one might want children, the other does not. And also, so those are things that we mention also that things regarding the person's that physical appearance or of those things, which will include concerning junoon, the person also has insanity or some level of their mental capacity is not there fully. Aywa?
So you see the example when you're talking about someone's mental capacity or anything on those matters. What if the spouse is told, look, for example, got this mental condition and it affects me like A, B, and C. It affects me on my day to day. But then when they enter the marriage, like, I can't deal with this.
Aye. Then no matter that if it was explained before, and then when a person they accept what were told to them and explained to them, then after the marriage, the person finds it difficult to really cope with it. Now, then that matter go back to that maybe go to an hakim or they have to now go back to a system of how to end that marriage. If the person finds that they have tried but they are unable to cope, right? Based upon what they were in trying to deal with it, they find somewhat maybe difficult to really deal with it practically. Then says no, it's the fact that it can be ended, but is the method to end that marriage. We've been on a method to end that marriage to see regarding concerning that it wouldn't be per se based upon uyub in this case, but maybe use another platform to end that marriage. Aywa?
When one of the married couple has the right of option to rescind the marriage contract or not, the execution must be done by the judge or the one in authority, such as a matter needs ijtihad and consideration. Thus, the judge or the one in authority can rescind the marriage contract if demanded by the claimant spouse or give the latter permission to do so.
So on this matter regarding concerning in ending these type of situation where there's a shortcomings in a person or one of the spouse in ending the marriage, so even the person have the right of fasq to nullify the marriage, then of the ulama, can they do it between themselves or they need to go to a judge? So you have, as the author kind of somewhat more inclined, or as a position taken by some of the Hanabila, that one has to go through the judge or the sentence or someone else external to look at the matter, a person of ilm. So it shouldn't be nullified or they shouldn't come to a decision between themselves, but rather go to either the judge, if in a Muslim country, go to the judicial system to look at the matter, or someone of knowledge in that non-Muslim country to look at the matter to see and to weigh up the matter, but not to be done between themselves. So the position taken by some of the ulama, where they mentioned it would not be a valid termination of the marriage unless it's done through a judge or through another source, Islamic source or body. Then that's a position taken by some of the Hanabila. Also you find that others are of the view that which is Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, that regard that it could be done without the judge. So the position that it is for them to terminate the marriage without the involvement of the judge, based upon that thing is very apparent, then he mentions that it is something that it is valid for them to end it between themselves.
In any circumstance.
Now, if it falls in line with those cases, that it is valid. Yes, I would say the aib, that shortcoming is something which is valid. So that's the thing. So overall, though, even though Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned this, that overall the better choice and method is go through a judge or an Islamic body to look at the matter, so to make sure the matter is weighed up and what is being put forward as being the shortcomings is either something which is valid. I said she might disagree or disagree. She have X amount of toes she have 4 toes, not 5. You understand? Then those things to be weighed up. Aywa.
If the contract is rescinded before the consummation of marriage, the wife does not have the right to claim her dowry. This is because if she is the claimant of the rescinding of the marriage contract, then she is the one who causes separation. On the other hand, if the husband was the claimant of the rescinding, then it means that she has not told him about her defect. In both cases, she does not have the right to claim her dowry. However, if the marriage is rescinded after consummation, the wife has the right to claim the dowry specified in the marriage contract. This is because the wife's dowry becomes obligatory for being stated in the contract and settled by the consummation of the marriage, i.e. having sexual intercourse.
It is the position taken by regarding to the discussion regarding that in those cases that the ruling may vary based upon before dukhul. Dukhul meaning intimacy. So I use the word dukhul meaning intimacy. Before intimacy, then then she's not deserving mahar if there's before intimacy, but after intimacy, then she's deserving al-mahar. In a dispute between Sifan of those who mention she's deserving of intimacy, that's a position taken by Omar ibn Khattab, also Imam Malik, Ahmed, and also Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. He stand by that position. So she deserving after intimacy, she deserving mahar. That's a position taken by, as mentioned, Omar from the Sahaba, Malik, Ahmed, and also Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. He stand by that position. Aywa.
Thus, the dowry becomes the wife's right and cannot be invalidated in this case. It is invalid to marry a young girl, an insane woman, or a slave girl to a man who is afflicted with a defect that affects the consummation of marriage. This is because the guardian is supposed to look for the best interest of the woman under his guardianship. Yet, if the guardian is not acquainted with the suitor's defect, he is to rescind the marriage contract once he knows about it in order to spare the woman under his guardianship and harmful consequences. In this connection, if a sane, mature woman gives her consent to marry an impotent man or one whose penis is amputated, the guardian does not have the right to prevent the marriage, as sexual intercourse is a matter that concerns the bride alone, no one else. However, if she accepts to marry an insane person, a leper, or a man afflicted with vitiligo, her guardian can prevent the marriage in this case, as the negative effects of the husband's defects may exceed the wife to befall their children, in addition to the blemish that may befall the family.
And so in those cases where regarding concern the wali, regarding the involvement, or that is where the wali can stop the marriage or annul the marriage, and cases where if the woman that she's mature and she knows of these things but still accept it, then in that case the wali can somewhat to try to convince her not to do so, because concerning those things may not serve her best interests. So that's concerning those matters. They mention also of some of the masail they discuss regarding this matter, regarding concern even this discussion, that they mention that thubut al-khiyar lil-uyu'a lil-aib, that does the person have a right, or is it allowed for a person to have the right to continue the marriage or not if they become aware of the person having that type of deficiency? So on this matter, you find that Jumhur of the ulama is that yes, that the person have this right for them to remove themselves, or that they either to choose this way or that way if they become aware of this. So the position taken by Jumhur of the ulama. But you find concerning that the Ahnaf, so they mention that of Jumhur will include Omar, Ibn Umar, Ibn Abbas, Malik, Shafi, Ahmed, Ishaq, that the person have khiyar, or yaju, that they have the right to either choose to continue the marriage, or they have a right that they can annul the marriage. That's the call of Jumhur of the ulama. As for the Ahnaf, that they have taken the position regarding la yuthbit al-khiyar, that a person does not have this right. So the person after getting married, but the spouses that one the other found that the other person have some form of deficiency, that I mentioned that they don't have a right to end the marriage, but rather so that's concerned the view that is taken. So either the person should continue with the marriage or they just divorce them. But as for that, so you have divorcing will take a particular method Or al-fasq, we take a different method, which is just become annul. Everything comes to an end immediately. That's al-fasq. But as for talaq, so either person, if you decide to end the marriage, you have to be through the way of talaq, not by way of fasq. That's the position taken by the Zahiriyah and also the Hanafiyah. What's the qawl al-jumhur? But I mentioned that qawl al-ahnaf wa Zahiriyah, qawl al-marju'a. Their qawl is, it stands no weight. Their qawl stands no weight. So those are some of the masail that they mention. Just to add also, they of those things that are discussed, that if so they discussed concerning that, so they mentioned that if the woman that she did not, so of case as they mentioned, if the woman wasn't aware regarding of the aib, that or that issue, then is she deserving mahar after consummation? Yes, everything. So she's deserving everything. Okay. So so I mentioned that in that case, if she is deserving her full mahar, if she was not aware, but if she was aware of things before, then she's not deserving her mahar. If she was aware, then she's so if she was aware, then nothing then is not to be given back. Is not to be if she was aware of the aib after consummation, then she's not deserving, or she's not deserving anything. She's not deserving of anything. But if she was not, then she's still deserving of her mahar. Aywa. So that's concerning of the things they discussed regarding al-uyub. So al-uyub fi nikah, of those things that sometimes may occur regarding those cases. Aywa.
That chapter done. That chapter is done.
Yeah, that chapter is done. Aywa. So go to the next chapter.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi wa ma'alif hafidhullah. Chapter 8, page 389, marriage of disbelievers.
So the mention of those things that are discussed between the fuqaha and the books of fiqh, of those marriages that occur and regarding what's the Islamic position and how to approach those things from an Islamic perspective, they mention regarding that al-ankiya al-kuffar, so marriages of the kuffar. So between the kuffar, so in the cases regarding concerning, in those cases the kuffar regarding how to look at their marriage between themselves, what we recognize as legitimate marriage between them, and also cases that will be discussed where a person, say non-Muslim, one of the spouse, were to accept Islam, then how we look at, so what's the position to be taken regarding those cases. So if one of the spouses or both to accept Islam, how to approach those cases. So these are the things to be covered. Aywa.
Disbelievers here refers to Christians, the Jews, and people of other beliefs such as Jamaykee and idolaters. This chapter deals with the rulings on the marriages of such disbelievers if they convert to Islam or seek the judgment of the Islamic judiciary concerning marital cases while they are still disbelievers. So regarding concerning the kuffar that they mentioned, so the kuffar in general concerning, in summary, anyone who's upon other than Islam is a kafir. So anyone who's upon a religion other than Islam, then there so you have Islam, Muslim, and kuffar. So regarding concerning the kuffar, that with them also, they fall into categories. So you have concerning category regarding that, so you have what is referred to as Ahli Kitab. That's the highest rank amongst them in the sense of they are kuffar still. But they are considered to be Ahli Kitab by way of the foundation of their religion was by way of revelation. They deviate from those things. So, but the source of their religion go back to something of parts of revelation. So they are referred to as Ahli Kitab because they received a book previously. So in some cases, Islam treats them different than how they may treat others among the kuffar. So you have
So amongst the kuffar, you have Al Kitab. Then you have said no, the general kafir, or kafir that falls outside those two of Al Kitab, the Jew and the Christian. So regarding concerning how to deal with those cases, so either cases where looking at one of them accepting Islam, or cases that they come to us, want us to perform nikah for them. What are things to be done in those cases? Aywa?
The ruling on the marriages of disbelievers are the same as those on the marriages of Muslims with respect to validity, divorce, sihar, illa, alimony, and the nights one spends with one's wife.
So the general rule regarding concerning that if the kafir come to us as Muslim and want us to intervene in their marriage, then we apply to them the rule of Islam. So regarding if they want to get married, they come to us as a Muslim and want us to marry them, then we marry them according to the rules of Islam. Nam. So the marriage will be done. So if they come to us from Al Kitab, then we'll carry out the marriage of them according to the rules of Islam. So it includes, for example, their marriage that you have the bride and female have to be from Al Kitab. Then also that she have a representative as being her wali, also witnesses, and also mahar. So all the rules that we apply upon ourselves, then the same thing will apply upon them. So those things occur regarding that most likely in a Muslim country, Islamic state, and you have a minority kuffar maybe living in that Muslim state, and I want to get married, then the Muslim, those in charge, will apply the Islamic law over them, but in there, according to amongst themselves. Then, so that's concerning those matters. That's concerning those matters, and also even with them, then we wouldn't acknowledge. So, we will discuss those matters.
That is to say, the women a disbelieving man is prohibited to marry are the same as those prohibited for a Muslim man to marry, such as the mother, the sister, etc. This is because the disbelieving married women are referred to as wives in the Quran. Allah exalted be He says, and his wife as well, the carrier of firewood. Surah Al-Masad, ayat 4. Masad, yeah. Allah also says, and the wife of Pharaoh said, Surah Al-Qasas, ayat 9. Hence referring to those disbelieving women as wives in the Quran indicates the validity of their marriage.
So because those marriages of theirs have occurred according to their law, then Islam would acknowledge it. Will acknowledge if it occurred according to, in their eyes, it was done according to their system of marriage, then Islam would acknowledge it. Right? So for example, us in this society, that as well, that even now, that's how if they were to their marriages that they do in their system of going to either to the church or by whatever their place of worship, or they go to the town hall and get married. In Islam, it is still recognized because it's still a legitimate way of recognizing their marriage. So it will be through the civil marriage system or through the church in their religious practice. So Islam would acknowledge their marriage as being legitimate. So if they live in a Muslim country, now they're still considered to be, or if they were to come to they're still considered to be a couple who's married. They're still considered to be a married couple. Aywa.
Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the sound opinion is that the marriages of disbelievers which are viewed prohibited in Islam are absolutely prohibited in any other religion. If they do not convert to Islam, they will be punished for them in the hereafter, but if they become Muslims, they will be pardoned for them, as they have been unaware of the prohibition of such marriages. As for the validity or invalidity of such marriages, they are viewed valid from one perspective and invalid from another. If what is meant by validity is the lawfulness of taking full responsibility as a couple and fulfilling the marriage contract, then the validity of their marriage in this case is dependent on its consummation according to the Islamic regulations. However, if what is meant by validity is the enforceability of the rules pertaining to marriage, such as the rescindment of the marriage contract due to threefold irrevocable divorce, the effectiveness of divorce, and the establishment of marriage and the resultant chastity, then the marriage is deemed valid. According to the rulings on the disbelievers' marriages, is that their invalid marriages are to be conceded under two conditions. A. Their invalid marriages are to be conceded by Muslims if they believe them to be valid in their creed. Whatever marriages they do not deem valid are not to be conceded, as they are not admitted in their religion.
So you might find today regarding concern the kuffar and their way of marriages. So you have a different type, and they're changing now. That regarding concern. So what's the ordinary marriage that we know regarding a male and a female? Now that's accepted by all. Now then we have now a system of recent, which is now recognized by some of the states, meaning kuffar, that are recognized regarding that this is no same gender marriages. In Islam, I understand that's unacceptable in any way. And there's no way to accept in Islam. So even though with them it is a valid way of marriage or recognized as valid, for us in Islam is in our case considered to be invalid. So in all cases it's considered to be an invalid marriage. So even though for them it is deemed as, so even concerned in the deemed as valid, but for us in Islam it's unacceptable and will never be deemed to be valid. So for us we can't acknowledge it as something that we see as something which is, because it's in this system, then we have to acknowledge and say it is something which is, mashallah, we cannot be doing those things or saying those things. So to acknowledge it, even if it is recognized in this system, and as Muslim, according to Islam, it's invalid and should not be recognized, nor praised, nor encouraged in any form or shape, because it's so Islamically it goes on that it will be illegitimate or invalid in any case and circumstance, and if those people are known to be involved in that practice, then they go to the judge for a different matter. So if they were to involved in that practice, as we'll discuss, they'll go to the judge for the judge look at them regarding concerning a different matter regarding them being committing another crime. For doing such practice, that becomes another crime that they are committing if they were involved in that practice. Anyway.
B. Their invalid marriages are to be conceded as long as they do not seek the judgment of the Islamic judiciary in this concern. But if they do, the Muslims are not to concede such marriages. This is because Allah exalted be, He says, and judge, O Muhammad, between them by what Allah has revealed. Surah Al-Ma'idah, Ayah 49. In this regard, if the disbelievers believe in the validity of their marriages according to their creed and do not seek the Islamic judgment, we are not to disapprove of them. To illustrate, the Prophet ﷺ took jizya from the Magi of Hijar and did not object to their marriages, although the Prophet ﷺ knew that they allowed marrying their legal unmarriageable kin. In addition, many people converted to Islam in the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, and he conceded their marriages without pointing out the way they were consummated. If a disbelieving couple comes to Muslims seeking their judgment before the consummation of their marriage, Muslims are to conclude in accordance with the religion of Islam, i.e. there must be the groom's spoken proposal, the bride's consent, the bride's guardian, and two equitable Muslim witnesses. Allah exalted be, He says, and if you judge between them with justice. Surah Ma'idah, Ayah 42. However, if a disbelieving couple seeks the Islamic judgment after the consummation of their marriage, Muslims are not to object to this manner of its consummation.
So I find that so I said that is recognized in their marriages if it is done according to what they believe or hold to be of their system of marriage, then Islam will acknowledge this. Within certain guidelines, within concerns of that which is acceptable also with Islam, that doesn't go against any, as I said, things that Islam holds to be completely haram, as we had cited some examples of this. So yes, we acknowledge their marriage. But also of a thing that you'll find that I think in this country, of a thing that in like churches or places of worship, that they can carry out civil marriages. But you have to have that type of authority from the state. So the mosque, the church, whatever these places of worship, that they can carry out civil recognized marriages or registered marriage by way of the state. But for example, if as a place, if you as a place of worship, that if you take on, if you are registered to do that type of marriages, then you have to marry anyone who comes to you and want to get married. That's the criteria. So a person, if it's the same gender, then you can't refuse them because it's recognized by the state. So if you are, for example, there was a thing that's a thing that comes with a type of those cases. So if you want to be legally recognized to perform marriages, then that'll be something that you see it as you perform, you offer this service to the community, meaning community, the wider community. So a wider community, so anyone who comes and says, okay, we want to get married, Christian, Jew, even Muslim, you can, as I say, even as an imam, you have to accept the wider community, and that will include those people, because they are part of the wider community according to them, and they're entitled to these rights, and it is recognized by the state that they're given their rights. So that's the complexity of getting those type of registry type of thing. And it comes with problem. That's the thing you may understand can come with those problems. For example, if you have that authority and you're not carrying out, you understand, you're dismissing those people, then they can revoke your title to carry out those type of marriages. So that's the thing that enter into those things at times. You have to weigh out all the things involved and to see, do you want to compromise certain things or not? Anyway.
Similarly, if the two disbelieving spouses convert to Islam, Muslims are not to object to the way their marriage was consummated or whether the conditions for its validity were there or not. Rather, if such a couple comes seeking the Islamic judgment regarding their marriage, Muslims are to consider that matter at the time when they seek the Islamic judgment or the time of their conversion to Islam. However, hence, if the wife then is among the women lawful for her husband to marry as a Muslim without any legal barrier, the marriage is to be approved of, since there has been no legal barrier from the beginning. There is nothing to prevent maintaining their marriage after the conversion to Islam. Yet if the wife is originally prohibited for the man to marry, at the time when they seek the Islamic judgment or at the time of their conversion to Islam, they are to be separated. This is because...
It's a meaning that, for example, that they're Ahl Kitab, so they will recognize their marriages. Or if they come to the Muslim judge, so they got married 10 years ago. The time they come to the Muslim either to recognize their marriage, or in other cases that they want to get married, that if when you look at the matter, they want to renew their marriage. When they come to the Muslim, they have to know that in their system they are allowed to marry brothers and sisters. But they got married years ago, but they want to renew it now with the Muslims. Then, if that factor is there, the marriage cannot be continued Islamically. Cannot be continued Islamically because there's mawana. There's something that is of those things that bar them from getting married, which is the relationship that they have between themselves by way of the blood relation. So that's regarding of those cases. So before, that's on them. When it comes to the Muslim attention, if they want to renew their marriage, they cannot, based upon those reasons, because of that factor. Aywa.
This is because the invalidity of their marriage contract from the beginning causes the prohibition of its being continued. As for the dowry specified for the wife before the conversion to Islam, if it is something lawful, she can have it, for it is her due right according to the marriage contract, and there is no legal reason preventing it being given to her. However, if the dowry is something corrupt or unlawful, such as wine and swine, there will be two rulings. First, if the wife has already received it as a dowry, then it is deemed fulfilled, i.e. she is not entitled to get something instead, as she has received it according to their previous creed, disbelief.
Okay, so if the case that we're concerned, that in a case concerned a Muslim getting married, and that their mahar that he gave to her, that as I mentioned, either one, cases where the mahar that was decided upon then and was something which is haram for us, that he gave her alcohol or something of that nature, that's haram. Then, so that if it was given, then khalas is finished. It was given, so that's finished. So in that case, there's no need to, you understand, for her to be compensated again for another mahar that initially that's considered to be haram. So there's no need for compensation in that case, because it has already been received. Right? Aywa?
Thus, the obligation of the dowry is deemed fulfilled on the part of the husband. Moreover, if Muslims raise their objection on such matters, it will cause difficulty and disincline people to convert to Islam. Therefore, such matters are pardoned due to the married couple's conversion to Islam, just like all other acts disbelievers used to practice before the conversion to Islam. Second, if the wife has not got such an unlawful dowry, then a proper lawful dowry like that given to ones like her is to be specified for her. However, if she has already received part of her unlawful dowry during the time of disbelief, the other part is to be estimated and given to her according to the proper lawful dowry like that given to ones like her. Similarly, if her dowry has not been specified before converting to Islam, then she is to receive a proper lawful dowry like that given to the ones like her, as it is invalid not to specify a dowry in the marriage contract. Moreover, if the two spouses convert to Islam at the same time, their marriage is to be maintained, as there is no religious distinction between them. Furthermore, if the husband of a Christian...
I also mentioned that tonight, so the case you'll find that one, the scenario regarding that with couples, that you find a scenario where one, that both the husband and wife of a different faith, they accept Islam together and they have a recognized marriage. They have a recognized marriage from before and they accept Islam, then there's no need to renew their marriage. So they got married, for example, a couple come to the masjid, and they said that both husband and wife took their shahada at the same time, but they were previously married. They're married couples, and they come to Islam together at the same time. Then there's no need for to renew or to do a new marriage for them again. We recognize what was before, so there's no need for them to go over the process of getting married again. There's no need for that because they already had a recognized marriage from before. So that's kind of somewhat they consider to be husband and wife, and no renewal of their marriage. That's the first one I said, when both husband and wife accept Islam together from a recognized marriage from before. Aywa?
Furthermore, if the husband of a Christian or a Jew woman converts to Islam, whereas she does not, their marriage is to be maintained as a Muslim man is originally allowed to marry a Christian or a Jewish woman, so it is valid with greater reason to maintain her as a wife after the husband's conversion to Islam.
It's the second case between a spouse, husband and wife, where in this case we accept Islam. The husband accepts Islam, but the wife, she's from Ahl Kitab, that the wife that he has, that they were, for example, Christian or Jewish wife. So the husband now is a Muslim, but his wife is from Ahl Kitab. Also in that case, there's no renewal of their marriage. And the marriage still stands because it's said to be, he still allows a Muslim man to still have a wife that is from Ahl Kitab. So their marriage still stands as it is. The marriage is still stand as it is. So they mentioned that ibtidaan, from the start, a Muslim can marry Ahl Kitab. So if they're already married, then it remains. So it continues as it is. Because he's Muslim and she's, for example, now considered to be, she's still upon a religion which is Christianity, or she still remain upon a religion of Yahud, then the marriage just continue as it is. The marriage continue as it is. Aywa?
On the other hand, if a disbelieving woman converts to Islam while being married to a disbeliever, and before the consummation of marriage, their marriage is invalidated. Allah exalted be He says, and do not return them to disbelievers, as they are not lawful wives for them, nor are they lawful husbands for them. Surah Mumtahina, ayat number 10. Accordingly, the woman in this case does not have the right to claim her dowry, as the rescindment of marriage is her part.
Anyway, so I mentioned, so that's concerning the next scenario. Regarding the next scenario, if the woman accepts Islam. Now, so if the woman is considered to be a what? A Muslimah. So anyone that she's married to who is not a Muslim, then it's invalid. So a Muslim woman is only allowed to marry a Muslim man. So if that husband, whatever faith that is upon from Ahl Kitab or non-Ahl Kitab, then automatically they're considered to be, that marriage is invalid. Because she's a Muslimah and he's a kafir. When a Muslim woman is not allowed to marry but a Muslim man. So that's concerning that scenario, but also other things to factor in, to factor in as to be discussed.
Similarly, if a husband of a disbelieving woman who is neither a Christian nor a Jew converts to Islam before the consummation of marriage, their marriage is invalidated. Allah exalted be He says, and hold not to marriage bonds with disbelieving women. Surah Al-Mumtahina, ayat number 10. In this case, the man has to pay her half the dowry, as the rescindment of the marriage is on his part.
Hey, so they mentioned that, so in the case here, they mentioned two scenarios, that if the woman accepts Islam and the husband accept Islam, then in that case the marriage considered to be invalid. So in that case, that after the khul, then she doesn't get anything. Then the next case regarding that, if a man accepts Islam and the other party is wife, she's from a non-Muslim, but she's not from Ahl Kitab. So she's not from the people of the book. So if the wife is from people of the book, then the marriage still stands. But if that wife is not from the people of the book, then that marriage also becomes invalid, as the Muslim man is only allowed to marry Muslimah or Ahl Kitab. So anyone who's outside that three group, then that marriage is considered to be batalat, is considered to be invalid. Aywa.
In this connection, if one of the disbelievers...
But he mentioned in case that he gives her half of her mahar. So that was agreed upon as the mahar, if after the dukhul, after intimacy, she receives half the marriage, because he's the one who's ending the case. Because of, from his side, the marriage is being ended. Aywa.
In this connection, if one of the two disbelieving spouses who are neither Christian nor Jew converts to Islam, or if a disbelieving woman converts to Islam after the consummation of her marriage to a disbeliever, the matter becomes dependent on the wife's waiting period. In other words, if one of them converts to Islam during the wife's waiting period, their marriage is to be maintained as valid. However, if the other spouse does not convert to Islam during that period, their marriage is deemed invalid, since one spouse has converted to Islam. In addition, he who converts to Islam while having more than 4 wives.
So I mentioned the next matter regarding concerning إذا أسلم أحد الزوجين غير كتابية أو كتابيين أو أسلمت كافرة تحت كافر بعد دخول. So the next matter they mentioned that in this case more so if the wife have accepted Islam and then in that case she have accepted Islam, that the marriage is invalid. But I mentioned that she goes through like a idda, so the woman accepts Islam and she has a husband that whether kitabiyya or not kitabiyya. So what will be done in that case? That of khilafatin ulama that she'll have a idda. So from the time that she accepts Islam, then she starts her idda, because her husband is what? Non-Muslim. So she go to the idda, which would be 3 months. Let's say 3 months or 3 cycles. We're saying 3 months. So for the next 3 months, then she shouldn't marry anyone else, but wait to see whether he will accept Islam or not. So during the idda period, she's like a waiting period regarding to see whether he will accept Islam or not. So if he accepts Islam within that 3 months of the idda period, then their marriage just continues as normal. So without them have to renew their marriage. Right? Clear? So that's the view I've taken by some of the ulama. Then of those who mentioned that, of those who mentioned if now, for example, she waited for the iddah of 3 months and he accepted Islam later on. So she didn't remarry anyone, but he came after 6 months after, a year after. Do they need to renew their marriage or not? Right? So within the iddah of 3 months, there's no need to renew. They just go back to normal, the marriage go back to normalcy and recognized as a valid marriage. But if it exceed over that iddah period, for example, you accept Islam a year after, does also they have to do, if they want to go back together, you accept Islam and they want to remain married, they have to now do a new marriage, or they continue as they are. They continue with the marriage that they had before, the marriage that they had before. So you have a discussion between ulama on that point. So you have Ibn Taymiyyah, or that what happens in those cases that the woman she have a 6 months, she waits, she have the right to wait as long as she wants to see if her husband accept Islam. And whatever point that they accept Islam, then their marriage is considered to be a valid. The previous marriage, it is taken without a renewal of marriage. That's concerning of the view that is taken by some of the ulama on that matter. So that's concerning that discussion they have that is being discussed. So overall, that she goes to a waiting period and to see what happens in that time. Aywa.
In addition, he who converts to Islam while having more than 4 wives who have converted to Islam too, or who are Christians or Jews, has to choose only 4 of them to keep as wives. This is based on the fact that when Qais ibn al-Harith converted to Islam while having 8 wives, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, select 4 wives to keep of them. The Prophet ﷺ said to the same to other on similar occasions, and Allah knows best.
Okay, so the next matter regarding concern of those cases that if a man accepts Islam and also he has multiple wives exceeding 4, so what to be done in that case? So if a person so the case that concerns a person to accept Islam, the male to accept Islam, but also his wives accepted Islam, but he has more than 4 wives. What to be done in that case? So if one, even cases, for example, the person and the man accept Islam, and he have many wives. Yeah, for example, in this case they mention how many? 8 wives. Now, that in that case, if, for example, that if all those 8 were to come with him in Islam, then he has to keep 4 and do away with the remaining ones. So he cannot exceed 4. He cannot exceed 4 wives. Even though they mentioned the hadith here that they discuss concerning the hadith. So you have the case of Qais ibn Harith, that hadith in the At-Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah and others. The hadith is under discussion regards to authenticity. So some of the hadith, and also you have another hadith of Ghaylan ibn Aslama al-Thaqafi, that also when he accepted Islam he had 10 wives. Now he had around 10 or so wives. All those hadith are some weakness regarding those hadith. But I mentioned that they give strength to each other. But the general rule is anyone who accepts Islam, that under any case, the one is not allowed to exceed 4 wives. That's the general rule. So even though you have a legitimate marriage before with those 10 or 8 wives, if you come into Islam, then that cannot continue. Aywa.
With the wives that are, say for example, the example that's given in the book with the 8 wives, with the 4, that would be, divorced. What's the situation with their iddah? Do they have to go for a 1-month cycle or a 3-month cycle?
With fasq, that usually concerning fasq, with their case will be just 1 month. Now, so in most of those cases it will be 1 month, and they can somewhat move on. As it will be a fasq. Now, so it will be like 1 month regarding their case, or 1 cycle. Then after they can move on. They can move on because it's not a divorce. It's not per se a divorce. It's a termination of the marriage. So it's not a divorce. That divorce takes 3 months. Termination, they usually go for, let's say istibrar, which is, or istibra, which is more like give her a month to see if she's pregnant or not. So you will take 1 month, not per se 3 months. So although it is mentioned, so it said the Quran because of the hadith of Qais ibn Harith, that as mentioned, those hadith that there are under some discussion regarding, one that is regarding who's the Sahabi, and also some of the ulama, all the hadith to be somewhat da'if, of those who all the hadith to be da'if. So they mentioned in Tirmidhi ibn Majah, min hadith ibn Omar, where they mentioned that fi sanad ikhtilaf, so there's a difference in the isnad of the hadith. Imam Bukhari al-Bukhari rahimahullah قال هذا حديث غير محفوظ, that hadith is weak, that hadith it is weak. And also Ibn Abi Hatim and Nabihi wa Abi Zurha قال hadith mursal asad, that hadith of a break that it says mursal is not a complete chain. So you have some discussion regarding and Ibn Abdul Bar that all mentioned that the narration regarding these cases that they're all weak, but they mentioned that the standard practice become the standard practice. That becomes the standard practice, that if anyone was come into Islam and having more than 4 wives, then he has to trim it down and choose any 4. So he choose any 4. So it's not based upon, so he choose any 4, and whatever exceed 4, then they're terminated or the marriage is annulled. So he can choose any 4. So it's not based upon first come order. It's any 4 that he chooses. As I mentioned in the hadith, and I mentioned اختار منهن أربع, that for you to choose whichever 4. So you to choose whichever 4. So it's not based upon order. As to first, second, third, fourth, is not based upon that sequence or that order. So that's inshallah ta'ala, that's the end of that discussion. Aywa. Yes, that's concerning. That's the end. وبالله تعالى توفيق.